This is going to be a more old school Ben type of old draft philosophy type video. And I've been thinking a lot about ball handling bigs and just how valuable they are in the NBA, as we kind of all feel like we know. The NBA, more pace and space, so many of these giant players being able to dribble, but I think this matters a lot for role players too, and it matters for like sleepers in the draft who kind of get discounted because of other things. But being very large and ball handling with real ball skills and other skills or feel is so important, and it's something that I have ignored in the past. And if you don't like me, this is the video for you, because there's going to be a lot of some of my old misses, starting with Nas Reed, who I was really low on. This was the first draft I seriously covered, and I did not know jack shit, but I over-indexed on Reed's decision-making and motor and athletic issues and ignored the obvious skill that he displayed. There just aren't very many like 6'10", 6'11" strong guys who are as coordinated and as skilled handling as he is. He was comfortable attacking closeouts into floaters. You could see how nimble and mobile he was, even despite his lack of speed and some other conditioning and motor issues here. I love how he like uses his first step to fake going towards the baseline and then hard second step to get through this little gap and throw up a shot and get fouled. He was very nimble and light on his feet always. And even though it didn't always look super clean, he was really effective beating other bigs off of the dribble. Future NBA big Daniel Gafford can't stay with Nas Reed here. And I love this little like high gather pickup into a foul here, where again, comfortable attacking closeouts, beats this defender who opens his hips middle to slide. So Nas footwork, high step to get left, and ends up drawing a foul right there. We saw flashes of the player that he would become in Minnesota, running stuff like these like good DHO keep plays where he has the handle and the smarts and the instincts to find his way into the basket, use his strength to finish. And one of the huge advantages of having a big who can dribble himself to the rim, get himself positioned, is the finishing advantage that normally comes with being a big. That obviously there's trade-offs of every size and position. Most guards who are really great getting to the rim or creating advantages aren't as good finishers as big men tend to be. I've talked a lot about the dribble to post in the past on this channel, and Reed is a good example of this, as like, what more can you do than just post up, as there are so many college post-centric bigs who don't make it. But how do we differentiate the ones that do make it? And having a post move, like post bag, is good as a mix-up for 99% of players. And Reed was able to dribble himself into good position. Bigs had trouble stopping his drives with his speed and his handle, so they were in compromising positions. And by the time Nas got to the low block, he could do with whatever he wanted with his footwork and with his strength and his touch. He was already a pretty capable cutter as well, which is something that I value a lot more than I did 5 years ago or so. And he wasn't an amazing shooter, but he was willing and could attack closeouts. And though the feel was questionable at times, he made some really, really incredible plays as a handler. Pump fake gets him in the air, in and out dribble to evade this guy going for the steal, and then a great lay down there that doesn't get converted, but that's an excellent play. Was confident shooting off the catch, didn't hesitate on pick and pops or catch and shoots, and that's a trait that I value a lot. That 3-point volume versus the volume wasn't crazy, but it was definitely good enough to project future growth. And there definitely were real feel and turnover issues, and feel is really important. But I think the main thing with Reed was the consistency, and just the motor overall was bad. And some players that's damning, but obviously Reed has improved a ton in the league. But these kind of plays where he's just dribbling into nobody were the reasons that he went undrafted, which was obviously really dumb. And looking back, you can easily see the ways in which Nas Reed could have been an NBA contributor. Just kind of not really feeling the defense here. Nice job crossing back, and we can see the handling coordination, but doesn't really think about the fact that there's a defender right here and dribbles right into him and turns the ball over there. This was just part of Nas's game that a lot of people, myself included, index too much on. And some of those same issues have persisted into the league, where Nas sometimes doesn't pick his spots super intelligently and is kind of just playing like instincts, read your man, one-on-one basketball, but that has declined a ton. And context and role is so important. I talk about it all the time on this channel. And the Wolves have been a perfect spot for Nas to develop, not only as a defender, where this is a team that prides itself on defense. They have so many good defensive players, and Nas has turned himself with that mobility and feel flashes in college into a solid defender. But I talked about this with like the wingification of Karl-Anthony Towns. You should go watch that video if you haven't. But Nas can still do like the dribble into post thing, where he doesn't have to rely on Conley or someone else getting him post position. He can take on a big from the wing, get himself into good position, get himself to whatever spot he wants to use this spin back move and read the leverage of the defender, rather than relying on other players to have to do it for him, which is an important thing. The closeout attacking stuff has translated beautifully as like an off-ball wing, stretchy secondary role. And again, having a big sized wing who can dribble and hit floaters and pull-ups and especially finish really well at the rim is such an advantage. Having these players who, most players who are like guard or smaller wing size might have trouble with Gary Trent swatting at the ball at the rim here, but because Nas Reed is legitimately large, he can just jump straight over to get the ball out of reach, and that's all because of his handling coordination, his comfortability playing with the ball, which, though is becoming more common in the league, is still fairly rare. And it's good to have the post as like a mix-up, which Nas still does. Like when he gets switches on him, Minnesota loves to play really big lineups, either with Gobert or Towns on the floor. There's nobody under 6'5" for them, and he's able to beat smaller players in the post with his great footwork and touch, even though it's not the same as it once was. We can see him beating mismatches with size, and then some of the passing flashes, though he still turns the ball over a decent amount, and he's not the most incredible decision maker in the world. The flashes are still there. He backs down the mismatch, forces the help to rotate. Manipulation here. Look at him stare down Mike Conley, move Cason Wallace out of the way. That is a fantastic, fantastic play. And all of this was foreseeable. It wasn't necessarily obvious, I think, but I'm always reminded of an old Chris Ballard Colts GM quote where he's like, tell me what they can do. It's like, tell me what this guy can do for us, what we can turn him into, what role he can play within our system, and then we'll worry about the weaknesses later. And I think with guys like Nas Reed, that's really the important thing. Prospects with his handling coordination and feel flashes and strength are all really rare. Guys with center size who do the things that he did are rare. And I think that works with other prospects that I've missed on in general, and just some other prospects that a lot of people, the NBA included, missed on. Alperen Sengun being another one who I was really low on, or relatively low on, but I totally underestimated the extent to which his handling coordination, flexibility, and fluidity would translate in an NBA offense that empowered him. Sengun here, beautiful Euro step. He is one of the most flexible and malleable players in the league, can bend and contort his body in whichever way he wants to score. And he is a really deceptive handler, and he was as a prospect. I didn't value this kind of stuff, being able to throw an in and out and beat a big off the dribble cleanly. I didn't value that nearly as much as I should have in kind of baking into whether he could play on the perimeter. He wasn't a good shooter. I worried a lot about that, but I didn't think about the fact that he could run these DHO keeps and work as a big in these kind of situations to complement his low post scoring, which obviously was always amazing. We see the same dribble to post here, face up, hang, cross. into his post up here. The patience is excellent. But again, he doesn't have to rely on any of his guards to get him position. He can lull this defender to sleep who's probably not used to defending big guys who can handle, beat him baseline, wait for the help to come, overextends, and finish really strong. He just had this kind of crafty handling, driving, slashing game that I really discounted. And I think this is something I value now for prospects a lot, and I'm going to keep valuing, is actual center-sized guys with this kind of strength. And I'm not necessarily talking about guys like Grant Williams types who have this skill set but aren't center sized. Someone like Jaylen Johnson, who is legitimately very big and had this same skill set. Another guy from that same class who the NBA seemed to miss on, but was a standout with his ball skills, could attack an open floor, really fluid and coordinated. He had a lot of issues with like flexibility, but that's something that he improved a lot in the NBA. Another example of him dribbling into position where he uses his ability to drive middle to get this defender to commit with his hips, spin back off of his leverage. We've seen all three of these guys do that same thing, and it's kind of a trademark of these more mobile big men that are so valuable. This was like my favorite play from college, Jaylen Johnson, where these kind of flashes were things that I discounted, again, more than I should have for other traits like motor and feel, which matter, but again, overlooking these more special skills, really great hard plant with the right foot, deception to get this defender off balance, deceleration to finish through contact. And speaking of context and role, especially with a guy like Jaylen Johnson, a lot of his issues were beating a set defense and working against tough defenders 1v1. But how often in Atlanta does Jaylen Johnson just have time to set up, triple threat, and drive to the basket? It's not very often. So this, again, comes with like the what can he do? What role can he play? And obviously he ended up in a perfect spot for his game where he can be a passer and a transition gunner off the ball and work with Trae Young as a secondary creator and stuff, which is exactly what people who were high on Jaylen Johnson saw from him and thought that he could be. And he has become this because having a guy who can play as a big on defense, who can protect the rim like Jaylen Johnson does, as well as being able to finish like a big, but having the handling skill he does, is such a luxury. I think real bigs with ball skills is so important. And the main guy who I think about this in terms of like an underrated potential breakout is Oso Ighodaro, who I feel like isn't that underrated anymore. He has this nice little floater game, isn't a shooter, which is an issue, but he is legitimately very tall and long. You can just see it on the floor, very comfortable in this intermediate floater range, but obviously the lack of spacing is an issue. And we see the same stuff we've seen, being able to handle into position, not necessarily starting in great position, but he takes his man 1v1 from the perimeter, gets to a spot he likes, and hits a little floater. He is a wizard in these dribble handoff pro style actions that Marquette likes to run. And we see the handle here, the patience on the second action here. He fakes the dribble handoff, goes to the rim, gets a big dunk. These are NBA style actions that are really important and have turned guys into real high value role players or more, like Reid, Sengun, Jaylen Johnson. And I think Ighodaro could be a guy who follows in this path. We see he's quick, he's coordinated, he can really handle the ball. Kyle Filipowski, who I did a video on previously, is another one of these guys who I think can fit this like handling big role, very skilled and super big and physical. Obviously, Alex Sarr at the top of the draft is part of his appeal, but going forward, I think this is a thing to look at for these overlooked bigs that have other issues, whether that be shooting or decision making or defensive questions. But this is a skill set that gets guys on the floor. NBA teams really seem to covet this skill set, and it's going to give these guys opportunities to get better and to grow. So this is just something that I've been thinking about regarding old prospects that I've missed on and how to get better at evaluating these types of special dribbling bigs, because the more the league continues to trend the way it does, these guys are going to keep getting more and more important. And Nas Reed is God. I just wanted to say that too.